Sonic Frontiers has had a massive impact in the Sonic fandom. Thankfully, it's the good kind of impact. As we speak, fans are united in voting for Sonic Frontiers as the Player's Choice Game of the Year, and we are operating like a well-oiled machine. Of course, not everyone likes the game, but me, I'm completely sold on it. There's so much to like about Sonic Frontiers, but there's also some things that definitely hold it back, most of which I'd say can be blamed on certain decisions made behind the scenes by Sega. So yeah, there's no way a good Sonic game releases without me talking about it, because it's been a really long road to get here. It's been painful. What I hope to do for you in this video is talk about the good in Frontiers and the bad, and break down what may have caused some of these downfalls. And maybe, just maybe, this video can contribute to the many voices of criticism that Sonic teams seem to be really open to right now. We just need to let them know what they can do slightly better next time. Yeah, my name is Silas, and if you like this video, like and subscribe to see what I do next. Now, the core concept of Sonic Frontiers basically comes down to one word: fun. Imagine in your head, right now, a massive environment with lots of obstacles and platforming challenges just waiting for you, and you can travel through all of this at blistering speeds with towering cliffs, flowing rivers, and sprawling forests, keeping you on your toes with how you run around this world. All of this accompanied by a serenading soundtrack that complements the mysterious new land that you found yourself in. That's what Sonic Frontiers is. This is definitively Sonic the Hedgehog. Speed and adventure. This sounds amazing, but must be really challenging from a development perspective. Trying to get the physics right in terms of how Sonic's speed will interact with various terrain, how easily the player can change direction at high speeds. The physics of Sonic in an open world is something I imagine will need a lot of fine-tuning. And for the most part, Sonic team got it right. Sonic is a joy to maneuver across the vast world, and when it comes to tighter movements in more contained areas, he works pretty well there too. The platforming is not quite as precise as it could be, but the air boost and double jump are sufficient correctional tools. Sonic team definitely have some work to do on Sonic's aerial physics, but what they gave us in Frontiers was good enough, and I found myself able to adapt to it pretty easily. One thing worth pointing out is that if Sonic ever hits a certain incline at a high enough speed, he kinda goes flying into the stratosphere. Like, you could be zooming along and then all of a sudden, whoa, where are you going there, buddy? By nature, this is pretty janky and definitely needs to be touched up a little, but I kinda like it. I miss jank in video games sometimes, and once you go flying, you can just stomp right out of it, so it's not like you're just stuck in the air forever. There's a lot worse jank in plenty of other beloved Sonic games, so I'm perfectly fine with excusing this. I don't know, maybe I like launching off a rock and ending up in the Arc Space Colony. Is that so bad? Anyways. Alright, let's talk about it. The floating rails that we've been going on about since the first gameplay reveal. They're a bit weird. They're just sort of there, in the sky or slightly off the ground. I mean, rails and platforms that inexplicably float in the sky aren't a new thing to Sonic, or any other platformer, but it's a little weird in an open environment where you fully control the camera. These definitely threw me off a little, mainly because they can spoil a really nice view, and are subject to pop-in as you run around. Now let me be clear. I am not a guy who is bothered by pop-in, but I played this on the PS5 and kinda feel like I shouldn't be having this issue on the fancy next-gen hardware. Now I'm pretty confident that this problem could be eliminated, so here's what I think the culprit is. Sega has been pretty impatient with Sonic Team, and as Iizuka himself stated, the big businessmen have been pretty annoyed that there hasn't been a new mainline Sonic game in 5 years. Even with the delay this game already had, it still needed more time. And I think they didn't take the time to optimize this game for more advanced platforms like the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, simply because they didn't have that time. What will always bother me a little is that the rails are haphazardly scattered around the world. I just wish they blended into the terrain and looked like a natural part of the environment. I also think they should have made the rails and platforms flow into each other through a quick reaction-based homing attack or stomp. So the more skilled you are at the game, the more challenges you can complete in one go. So I hope we see something like that in future Sonic games. That aside, I like the purpose they serve. Each floating structure is its own little challenge that tests your precision and timing in order to give you a memory token, which is the currency you use to talk to Knuckles, Tails, and Amy. I think the challenges are fun to do. They make you use all of Sonic's movesets, and they help keep traversal of the open zones entertaining by breaking up the big long distances Sonic has to run. Let's talk about what I just touched on a moment ago. This game is a collectathon, which may turn some people off. But don't be fooled, collecting all the things you need is a pretty fast process. It's almost like this is a Sonic game. Long story short, you collect memory tokens to talk to Sonic's friends, you collect gears from fighting mini-bosses to access the cyberspace levels. Beating the cyberspace levels gives you access to vault keys, which lets you unlock the Chaos Emeralds. This sounds like a lot, but it all happens just so naturally. For most of the islands, you meet the token requirements just by exploring. I wasn't even thinking about memory tokens for like 90% of the game. The gears are interesting, as you have to fight different mini-bosses to get them. Some of these bosses are cool, mainly the combat-heavy ones like the ninja variants, but others pull you into an inescapable interaction that really just takes too long, and that is one of the things that really did get on my nerves whilst playing. I just want to beat the shit out of an enemy, not do all of this extra time-consuming stuff against bosses like the Caterpillar. So yeah, gears are pretty hit or miss, I can't deny that. And vault keys are always fun since you traverse cyberspace to get them. I'll talk about those levels in a minute or two. I will say for the last island, I noticed a jump in token requirements. I think this is because Sonic Team just didn't have the time to fully flesh out the later part of the game, so decided to pad it out with a little more token requirements. It's a bit unfortunate, however you can spend about 7 minutes in the big fishing minigame and get the tokens that way if you feel like it. By the way, the fishing game is obviously, and always will be, peak gaming. I think that's what's great about this collectathon. It accommodates different playstyles. If you want to go and seek out the memory tokens in the open world, you can. But if you get tired of that, you can hit up big at the fishing pond and make up the token amount pretty quickly. You can go through this game whichever way you prefer, which is nice. The other side of the game is the cyberspace levels, which are kind of like Breath of the Wild shrines in that they contain gameplay which fits in with the series' usual traditions. The boost formula has been talked about many times over many years, so I won't dwell on that too much. Firstly, these levels far exceed the levels in Forces. We have branching pathways, all of which require you to stay engaged and do some actual gaming instead of just holding forward. And big news, the boost does not make you invincible anymore, which means every time an enemy pops up, you have to respond. Wow, bandits are actually a threat again. Whoop-de-doo. The bounce from Sonic Adventure has returned, which can be instrumental in getting you some extra height over obstacles for an S-rank time. Basically, the levels keep you engaged from start to finish. Now, there are some drawbacks though. Some of the pathways are copy-pasted level sections from other 3D Sonic games, and there's only 4 level themes. Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and a City Escape Radical Highway type of thing. Why is it like this? Time constraints. Sonic Team knew they needed to have more pathways, but didn't have the time to design all of them, so they borrowed sections from previous games to give us a choice on how to beat the level, and stuck to 4 themes just so they didn't have to make too many new assets. It is a shame that they turned out this way, but the difference is that these levels aren't the main section of the game this time, so I can somewhat excuse it, and they are good fun to play, but I don't want to see this happen in future games. I'll quickly brush on combat. It's fun and flashy, but could be more advanced. There are some more sophisticated inputs, but eventually you unlock an ability which automates all of these, which makes boss fights feel just a little less rewarding. It's fun to look at, but I would like more depth. I want to feel like I'm tapping into Ultra Instinct when I take down enemies. Last bit about gameplay. Once you collect all the Chaos Emeralds, you go against these giant Titan bosses. Bro, these fights are crazy! Sonic goes super, and throws hands with these crazy strong beings. He cuts one of them in half with a skyscraper-sized sword. This is so fucking hype! All the while, the music is going like... bosses. Every 3D mainline Sonic game has at the very least attempted to tell us a story, so of course Frontiers does that as well. For the past decade or so, Sonic games have been written like a Saturday morning cartoon, leading to extremely basic plots, bland tones, and some god-awful dialogue. For years, Sonic fans have turned to the comics for actual good plotlines and thought-out character development. But yeah, this time Sonic Team blessed us. They got Ian Flynn, the main writer of the comics, to work with them on the story of Frontiers, and had him write all the dialogue since he knows these characters best. The result was beautiful. Sonic was written with more depth than ever, and actually showed a range of different emotions for differing scenarios. If you couple this with Roger Craig Smith's new and improved Sonic voice that lets him actually use his full voice acting range, and you have what I think is the best characterization of Sonic in the history of the franchise. Yeah, let me use a quick example for you. This scene here, where Knuckles is going through some troubling thoughts, Sonic sits next to him and is about to say something, but then holds himself back since he doesn't know what to say in the moment to help Knuckles, so he just lets him talk. If this was the Sonic from Colors or Forces, he would have said something like, "Haha, don't worry Knuckles, I'm gonna kick some cyberput and get you out of there before you can say Baldy McNosehair." Sonic's silence shows an empathetic side to him, which is a basic trait he has lacked for years. Amy, Knuckles, and Tails are also quite well written. Ian Flynn sets up some interesting character arcs for them, and makes sure everyone finds their own strength, moving forward independent of Sonic. So basically undoing all of that Sonic is our only hope nonsense that everyone had going on in Forces. Eggman is also there with his new creation, Sage. First of all, Sage kicks ass, and second of all, the dynamic between her and Eggman is so refreshing. Eggman hating Orbot and Cubot got so stale, and just seeing him get along with and be proud of one of his creations shows us many sides to Dr. Eggman that we just haven't seen before. And also Sage being exposed to different emotions and morals through Sonic was great to see, even if she is Sonic's adversary. In terms of the actual plot, an ancient civilization with advanced technology isn't exactly the most original idea, but I think it was probably the most convenient way to set up some actual lore for the Sonic universe, which I'm here for. Delving into the origins of the Chaos Emeralds and explaining things like how a creature such as Chaos came to be is just great for tying the Sonic timeline together. I like that the story immediately hits us with a mystery. The mystery of the AI voice that's guiding Sonic, with its intentions being extremely ambiguous. Yeah, I totally called this in a previous video, by the way. I'm just letting you know. Now, initially, I saw a lot of positive reception for Ian Flynn's writing, until some people started turning on it. People are saying it's written like a Family Guy episode, with the references in it being like the cutaway gags. So I thought I should weigh in on that. I think those people are being dumb. I found every reference to be pretty natural, and they did a good job of solidifying the Sonic continuity. I think it makes sense for Sonic and Co. to liken their experiences in Frontiers to past events so they can make heads or tails of it. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but I do think the change in attitude towards Ian Flynn's writing stems from that weird Twitter effect of being contrarian to look smart and superior to everyone else. I just think Frontier's story is interesting. It has fun character interactions and fresh dynamics. I like that it sets up for future games, especially when it comes to the end, which I expect to see pop up again at some point. I just don't think it was beaten that easily, and I am down for a Thanos-style build-up to a villain, if Sonic Team wants to go for that. I wasn't sure exactly where I could fit this in the video, but the atmosphere of this game, I love it. The Starfall Islands is a place that's still recovering from an ancient war, and the spirits of the fallen still roam the land. This gives it a super somber tone, which is portrayed really well in the quietness and serenity of each environment. This place is untouched and pure. The fact that it's still in recovery makes every island feel like you're roaming through one big liminal space, as the world isn't quite complete, but nature is still in the process of rebuilding itself. Genuinely, it's such a good environment to put Sonic in. If you ask me, This is the tone the Lost Hex should have had in Sonic Lost World, a society lost to time that's heartless on through the cocoa. Throughout this video, I've mentioned time restraints, which is a common talking point among Sonic fans. Sega loves to rush Sonic Team to release Sonic games before the project reaches its full potential. Eventually, this practice gets so out of hand, you end up with disasters like Sonic 06 and Sonic Boom. This game has that same problem. Sonic Team had to fight hard just to convince Sega to delay the game once, and even then, that was barely enough time to get this game ready. Like I mentioned before, in an interview, Iizuka said Sega were upset it had been 5 years since a Sonic game, and he also mentioned that they were working super hard to get this finished on time. It really does seem like there was a fair bit of crunch involved in this development, which is just never a good thing to hear. As much as I love this game, you can tell they ran out of time. The first 3 islands are a grassy area, a desert area, and then a volcano area. What about the last 2 islands? 2 more grassy areas that just reuse assets from the first island. It's so painfully obvious this decision was made to wrap the later half of development up as quickly as they possibly could. The 4th island is literally just 5 extended platforming challenges, and to be fair, the platforming was really fun, and the music was really good, but I would have vastly preferred a whole new biome. The 5th island is the regular collectathon format, but the theming is the same as the first island. I do think all of the grassy areas are really beautiful, but 3 out of the 5 islands being that way? Come on, let's be reasonable here. Even in terms of how the final boss goes, it's just not as engaging as the other bosses, but I do appreciate the spectacle of the showdown in space, and the great story beats did help soften the blow of a really quick final boss. This isn't the fault of Sonic Team. They showed their worth by coming up with and executing the ideas of Frontiers the best they could in the time they had. It's the businessmen at Sega. They speak money and don't want to wait the time it would take to fully flesh out Sonic Frontiers. It's true, this game did have more time than previous games, but some of that is due to COVID. Genuinely, if you've beaten the game, you know what I mean. It actually feels like Sonic Team just barely managed to wrap up development in time for release. Sega has a long history of doing this to Sonic Team, but there is a ray of hope in this. Sonic Frontiers took longer than Sega would have liked, but because of that, the fans love this game. This is the biggest outpouring of love from Sonic fans Sega has received in years, and the positive reception has been boosting sales for this game, which is exactly the language Sega speaks. In fact, there's already some signs that they may have finally picked up on this. We've had a ton of DLC announced for next year, with the 3rd wave including 3 whole new playable characters and extra story. On top of that, a Sonic Team member said this free DLC is only happening because of the massive positive reception from the fans, which adds up because if the DLC was pre-planned, then I think Wave 1 would come out much sooner after the game's release. I think this is why Sonic fans are so passionate right now about Frontiers winning Player's Choice at the Game Awards. It's a way to definitively show Sega what they need to do to keep their customers happy. And yeah, by the time this video is out, we'll know who won that award, so I really hope we did well.
The Game Award goes to Genshin Impact.
I like Sonic Frontiers, and that feels good. It's been a decade of L's left and right for Sonic fans, but we got a good one, and Sega seems to have noticed that giving Sonic Team leads to a better response and a lot more money for them. Pretty much all of Frontiers' flaws come down to time restraints, so if Sega has learned their lesson, whatever the next entry in the new open zone Sonic formula could be something really good, really beautiful, really cool, really awesome. Oh god, sorry, I'm getting a bit excited here. I'm getting carried away. If you're still here, thanks for listening to me ramble about one of my hyperfixations. I just really like this blue hedgehog guy. I don't know what else to say. Again, my name is Silas. If you like this, drop a like and a comment. Also subscribe because I would like it if you did that. Thank you.